Lindsey, take it away.
Thank you for allowing me the privilege to be with you on such a moment's notice. There's information that's happening right now, things that are taking place, even as this program is being recorded, that are so shattering. I felt that people must know what's taking place. Now, once again, all of those out in the listening audience, I feel it was by the providence of God that numbers of years ago I was invited to be the chaplain of the elite of the world. I got to know these people personally. They've kept in touch with me over the years. Some of them now are in their 70s and 80s as far as age is concerned. There are things taking place in the financial world right now that they told me about before they ever took place. In fact, just a few moments ago, before we actually went on the broadcast, Stan reminded me that on last week, he and I had made a CD recording, and it was done on May the 8th at 4:33 p.m. in the afternoon of 2012. Now, the reason this is so significant is because I had been told by, and please, folks, let me help you, if at all possible, to believe there positively is a group of people on the face of the earth who control the world. Nothing ever happens by chance. This was planned a long time in advance. They know what they're going to do next because everything is planned behind closed doors before it ever happens. And recently I was given a formula as to what was going to take place, and I was utterly amazed because it had to do with the derivative market, not the stock market, not what's taking place in Europe with the euro, but it had to do with the derivative market. And they said that the first indicator that we will have of something drastically taking place in the financial world will be a crack that will come in the derivative market. I had not the slightest idea. When Stan and I made this emergency CD on May the 8th, I had not the slightest idea how quick it was going to happen. I'm not a prophet. This comes directly from the elite themselves. And I had been told that probably the next thing we would see happen would be something major take place in the derivative market. Well, it did. In fact, it happened on Friday, May the 11th. Now, understand that Stan and I made that CD on May the 8th. And 3 days later, on May the 11th, which was Friday of last week, after the Wall Street bell, J.P. Morgan, now the largest brokerage house in the country, J.P. Morgan announced that they had just lost $2 billion in the derivative market. This is drastic. In fact, I'm quite sure they waited until after late in the afternoon to announce anything like this, or it would have caused major repercussions in the stock market. So as a result, when I heard this, I realized that I had just been told only a few days earlier that the first thing we were going to see whenever the elite were getting ready to allow something major to happen in the financial world is that we would see a crack in the derivative market. Now, let me say at this point, this is only a crack. This is only the tip of the iceberg. This is not the event that will bring. There's so much exposure right now in the derivative market. Well, now let me read you what exposure we have. And by the way, if for any reason you are not familiar with derivatives, please do a crash course on derivatives immediately. They're very complicated financial instruments. Nearly every major, well, I guess every major bank in America is involved in them. Government pension funds, private pension funds, everything imaginable is involved in derivatives. And they yet are probably the most precarious gambling instruments, and you heard me correctly. Going to Las Vegas would be mild compared to what the derivative market is. Now, the Comptroller of Currencies made the statement just recently, and I'll give you the actual facts. The Comptroller of Currencies says that the too big to fail banks, and you know approximately who those are exposed to derivatives in the following manner, to the following amount, I should say. J.P. Morgan Chase is exposed right now to $70.1 trillion in derivatives. This is mind-boggling. You understand that our national debt is only $15.1 trillion. J.P. Morgan Chase, who has been bailed out by the Federal Reserve, along with Citibank, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, and all the rest, listen to their exposure in the derivative market, which is no more than a glorified Las Vegas, except practiced by the multi-billion millionaires. Okay, J.P. Morgan Chase is exposed to $70.1 trillion of derivatives. Citibank is exposed to $52.1 trillion. Bank of America is exposed to $50.1 trillion in derivatives. Trillion. You heard me. I didn't say million. Trillion. Goldman Sachs is exposed to $44.2 trillion in derivatives. These are nothing but bets that they use as collateral for financial instruments. Now, here are the figures that will stun you. The 9 largest U.S. banks have a total of more than $200 trillion worth of derivative market exposure. I said that slowly because it's so startling and mind-boggling. And you realize that the taxpayer is the one that is obligated to all of this? Now, this $200 trillion worth of exposure on glorified Las Vegas-type bets that the banks call derivatives, this is approximately 3 times the size of the entire global economy, not just the United States of America, 3 times the size of the global economy. Now, my elitist friend told me about a week prior to my doing the CD recording with Stan just last week, he said, you need to watch 4 things. And he gave them to me. And I gave it on this CD. Number 1, he said, you must watch derivatives. And he said, if there's any doubt in your mind what they are, then he said, you must find out immediately. He said, number 2, whenever there starts to be a crack in the derivative market, you're going to see 3 things happen. Number 1, you first will see currency wars begin. Secondly, you'll see trade wars begin. And he said the final nail, the final straw that broke the camel's back, he said is going to be a rise in interest rates, which the Federal Reserve will announce. And whenever that happens, anything that you have in paper, you've lost it if you haven't gotten out before then. You can't wait until the European Union currency, the euro, crashes. You cannot wait till Wall Street crashes. If you wait until then, you've lost it. It's all over. Well, on Friday afternoon, and to my knowledge, this has never been announced, anything like this ever in the history of the United States of America. I've never known a major institution to announce that they lost $2 billion in derivatives. I mean, they just don't announce things like that. So as the weekend progressed, immediately on Saturday, I hated to do it on Saturday. I mean, it just was the wrong thing to do, to make a phone call to a prominent person, but I did. On Saturday, I made a phone call to a person I know on Wall Street, and I said, please, tell me what's going on. And the first thing he said to me was, he said, Chaplain, our entire staff, all of our associates, are on 24/7 emergency basis. Now, he sent me this in written form later in an email, so I have it before me. He had already said it over the telephone. That means 24 hours a day, somebody in their association was staying awake listening to the news of what was happening. There were some major financial meetings taking place over the weekend that nobody in America even knew about. Washington and Wall Street were on edge because they didn't know what this would bring about. And they were ready on Monday morning to do everything in their power to keep from having a major problem. This is a global financial thing because derivatives are not just in the United States of America. Derivatives are worldwide instruments that are used by every lending institution in the world in one way or another. So when this happened on Friday, I realized that I had been told in a week in advance something that I thought was going to take place later. I mean, weeks, maybe months down the line. But my source actually knew that it was going to take place almost in the immediate, and it did. So on Friday, it was a drastic situation, and major board meetings all around the country with financial institutions. So this morning, the first thing I did was watch to see if there was a bank closure, because I had been warned that if it got serious enough, they would have to close it down in order to be able to keep from having a panic. Well, fortunately, the average American knows very, very little about derivatives. So as a result, when it was announced that J.P. Morgan had lost $2 billion in derivatives, it didn't register with 99, 44, 100% of the people in America. It never even registered with them that anything had happened. If you had said that Wall Street stock market had gone down by 500 points or 1,000 points, the whole world, the whole country would have panicked. You say that the derivative market, that $2 billion was lost by J.P. Morgan, and nobody even gave it a thought. Yet the derivative market is so much more in peril than Wall Street, than the euro, than any of these other things that people are watching. If folks only had the foggiest idea as to what really is happening out there. So the derivative market on Friday, and then, of course, on Monday morning, it did not crash. No banks were closed. People will lull back to sleep again. This is only the beginning of the crack. You must be aware of everything that's going to take place from this point on, because things are literally, let's see if I can find the expression here that was made to me. He said, let's see, I'm trying to think what my Wall Street, he did send it over to me in an email afterwards. I just haven't had time to actually underline the phrases. But he went on to say that this loss is a disaster. He says it indicates very, very dangerous situation that is going on in the financial world. And I can't find the exact words, but please take my word for it, that what has just happened over the weekend in the derivative market is more drastic than people can even imagine. Now, let's go over the items that my elitist friend gave me back numbers of days ago, which I put on this CD that Stan and I did last week. He said, number one, don't pay any attention to anything else except the derivative market. He said, the American taxpayer right now are exposed to approximately $292 trillion in the derivative market through the banks that have been bailed out by the Federal Reserve. I mean, this is staggering. You know, whenever we consider the fact we have a $15.1 trillion national debt that they're willing to admit to, and everybody is just staggered by the fact that it took us over 100 years to accumulate $1 trillion worth of national debt, and now within the past 3.5 years, the President administration has chalked up $5 trillion worth of national debt in 3.5 years. I mean, it's staggering. A person can't even imagine what's happening. Now, whenever we consider that the American taxpayer is exposed through the banks to $292 trillion worth of derivatives, you must immediately become aware of derivatives. Whenever the derivative market begins to crack, it's going to bring about currency wars. It's going to bring about, as a result of currency war, trade wars, and the final step will be interest rates. And one figure that you'll find very interesting, a 1% rise in interest rates will add $140 billion to the national debt. Now, right now, interest rates are almost at zero. The Federal Reserve will have to begin to raise those if the financial condition in the world, and in particular with derivatives, continues. And the moment that they announce an interest rate rise that the Federal Reserve is going to do, it's over. The American dollar has had it, and you will see more and more of this. Again, I don't know how to say, Stan, except that the situation that took place this weekend was the tip of the iceberg. It's the beginning of something that is so catastrophic that the average person has not the slightest idea. The markets in Europe went crazy today. Greece is back in the news again. Italy is on the verge of some very drastic situations. France and some of the others are in jeopardy. Even Germany right now is saying, watch out, that there's something in the wind. And all I can say is, Stan, that at this point, people they're sitting back not even knowing anything's happening.
Okay, it sounds to me like what you're saying is the dollar is about to die. They're about to close banks and open them to do who knows what.
You're exactly right. In fact, that's what was announced. I wish you could have heard some of the Wall Streeters this morning. I heard them. I heard two of them. And one of them actually mentioned the fact that we should be very aware of the possibility that any day, without any warning, that as precarious as the whole situation is right now, that it could be announced one morning the banks aren't going to open today. Now, folks, that's getting pretty drastic, and that's not Lindsey Williams talking. That's not even one of my elitist friends talking. This is what a very prominent person on Wall Street said on the national news this morning. And I actually heard his statement. I didn't hear off his statement. I personally heard his statement that had been recorded. Now, you could, at any moment, wake up one morning and they'll say, go to your ATM, you won't be able to take out but how many dollars? And they'll give you a figure, and they'll limit it to that. You very well could be that they will say the banks are closed today, but tomorrow when they open up, you'll only be able to take out so many hundreds of dollars. It is that precarious. That's how close we are to something.